October 9th, 2003, Seoul, South Korea. It's just after sunset when a man named Yoo Young-chul steps into his luxurious home in Woji-dong, one of the most affluent neighborhoods in Seoul. He's expecting to hear the familiar sounds of his wife and son, the voice of his elderly mother calling from the kitchen. Instead, silence. Something feels wrong. He steps inside, calling out their names. No response. And then he sees it. Blood. A first body, his mother, is sprawled out on the cold tile near the bathroom, face down, unmoving. There's so much blood that he almost slips. His heart pounds as he stumbles forward. His wife, lying in the hallway near the fish tank, her head caved in by something heavy. His son at the top of the stairs, lifeless, blood trailing down the wooden steps like a horrific waterfall. Jung's mind refuses to accept what he's seeing. His hands tremble as he reaches for his phone. 911. His voice is barely coherent as he begs for help. Within minutes, the police arrive. But when they step inside, even these seasoned homicide detectives freeze in shock. This isn't just murder. This is rage. Who could have done this? And more importantly, why? The house isn't ransacked. Nothing is stolen. If this was a robbery, then why kill everyone in the house so brutally? And why does it look like the victims never even fought back? Something doesn't add up. And what the police don't know yet is that this is just the beginning. 2 weeks later, a new crime scene. This time, it's across town in the Gangnam district, a place known for its luxury, wealth, and power. And the victims? An elderly professor and his wife. Same brutal method, skulls crushed. It's as if someone had taken a sledgehammer to their heads. But here's the strangest part again, nothing is stolen. The crime scene is eerily organized. No signs of forced entry, no drawers opened, no jewelry missing. The only thing left behind, a bloody footprint. The print doesn't match any of the victim's shoes. It's clear. It belongs to the killer. The police start connecting the dots. Could it be the same person? Same method, same wealthy victims, same lack of robbery. At first, detectives hesitate. Serial killers are rare in South Korea, but deep down, a terrible realization starts creeping in. If this is a serial killer, then he's not done yet. And before they can find answers, the killer strikes again. October 16th, another murder. A wealthy elderly woman living alone in an upscale district is found dead in her home. And this time, there's no doubt. The pattern is undeniable. All victims so far are wealthy, all elderly, all brutally killed in their own homes. Yet nothing is stolen. And that's when the fear starts to spread. This isn't just home invasion. This is a hunt. But why? What kind of person targets the rich but never takes their money? The police need answers fast, so they turn to a criminal profiler. And his theory: this killer isn't driven by greed. He's driven by hatred. Hatred for the wealthy, hatred for what they represent. But the police are about to learn something terrifying. They've underestimated just how dangerous he really is. Because this killer, he's just getting started. November 18th, 2003. A thick column of smoke rises into the sky over an upscale neighborhood in Seoul. A fire department rushes to the scene, a luxurious 2-story home engulfed in flames. But when firefighters break through the front door, they find something far worse than fire damage. In the middle of the charred living room, 2 bodies. The first, a wealthy elderly man, the owner of the home. The second, his housekeeper. At first, it looks like they were trapped inside when the fire broke out. But the autopsy reveals something horrifying. They didn't die from the fire. They were beaten to death before the flames even started. And the cause of death, the same brutal head injuries as the previous victims. This is no accident. The killer set this fire to destroy evidence, and it almost worked except for one mistake. Buried under the ashes, investigators find it. Another bloody footprint, the exact same kind found at the previous murder scenes. Now, the police are certain this is the work of the same man. But here's the problem: is getting more careful. This time, he tried to cover his tracks, which means one thing: the killer is evolving. And what police don't realize yet, the pattern is about to break. Because the next murder won't fit the profile at all. The investigation is gaining momentum. Detectives are piecing together connections between the victims. They are so close to narrowing down a suspect. But then, something changes. A new wave of killings begins. And this time, the victims aren't wealthy. They aren't elderly. They are young women, attacked in the streets, stabbed repeatedly. The violence is chaotic, frenzied. Unlike the carefully planned home invasions, these attacks seem random. And that's when the police start asking, is this the same killer? Or has Seoul just become the hunting ground for two serial killers? Because these new murders break all the rules. The victims have nothing in common. The crime scenes are public. And most importantly, the weapon has changed. No more blunt force. This killer uses a knife. A new fear spreads through the city. It was bad enough knowing a murderer was hunting the rich. But now, anyone could be next. The media explodes with reports of a serial killer on the loose. But now, it's not just one. It's possibly two. Panic spreads. Newspapers, TV stations, they all demand answers. People are too afraid to walk the streets at night. And inside the investigation room, detectives are splitting into two groups. One team is hunting the hammer killer, the man who butchers the wealthy. The other is chasing the street slasher, the man who stabs women in the dark. But what if they are making a huge mistake? What if these aren't two killers at all? What if it's one man who simply changed his tactics? Theories are thrown around. Arguments break out. Some detectives insist the home invader is too careful, too methodical. The street killer is reckless, impulsive. They can't be the same person. But while the police argue over theories, the bodies keep piling up. And in the shadows, the real killer is watching, waiting, getting bolder. The investigation is stalled. No witnesses, no murder weapon, no leads, but the killer made one mistake. A bloody footprint. It's been found at multiple crime scenes, and now forensic experts are analyzing every detail. What size is it? What brand? Where is it sold? Detectives compare it to every shoe they can find. Dozens of brands, hundreds of models, and then they find it. The print belongs to a specific type of work boot, rugged, heavy-duty, meant for manual labor. It's not a common shoe. In fact, it's sold in only a handful of stores. This is it, a real lead. If they can trace purchases of these boots, they might find the killer. But here's the problem. What if he already knows they are onto him? Because while the police focus on this clue, the killer is already planning his next move. And this time, he's about to make a mistake that changes everything. January 2004. A former police officer, now working as a private investigator in Seoul's underground, receives a strange phone call. A man is on the other end asking for a woman. Not just any woman, he wants to hire someone for a private meeting. The ex-cop doesn't think much of it at first. Calls like this, happen all the time in his line of work. But then something chills him to the bone. The phone number the man is calling from. It's registered to a missing woman. A woman who disappeared weeks ago. A woman believed to be one of the serial killer's victims. What does this mean? Did the killer steal her phone? Or is she still alive? If this man has her phone, he's either her murderer or her captor. And that means one thing. They might finally have a way to catch him. The ex-cop knows this is dangerous. Whoever this man is, he's using the phone of a missing woman, possibly a murder victim. If he's right, this could be the serial killer. But he needs to be smart about this. A trap. So he comes up with a plan. He agrees to the man's request, but instead of sending a real woman, he works with the police to set up an undercover sting. They send a decoy. A woman trained to handle dangerous situations. Police set up surveillance, hidden cameras, backup officers waiting nearby. The meeting spot is chosen. The decoy waits, and then the suspect arrives. He walks toward her, but suddenly something's off. He stops, stares, and then he shakes his head and refuses. He doesn't even get close, just a quick glance, and he walks away. Why? Why reject her without even speaking to her? The police are confused, but later they realize the answer. She was too tall. For some reason, the killer only wanted short women, and that strange detail will be crucial later, because soon they'll learn why. The undercover operation isn't over yet. The suspect walked away from the first decoy. But police don't give up. They send in another woman, shorter this time, and this time he takes the bait. The moment he interacts with her, detectives move in. Officers rush forward, but he doesn't go quietly. The man fights back. He throws punches, thrashes violently. It takes 6 officers to finally pin him down. This is no ordinary arrest. Who is this man? His ID reveals his name, Yoo Young-chul, 34 years old. At first glance, he doesn't look like a monster. But when officers search him, they find something chilling. Inside his jacket, a hammer. And just like that, the police realize exactly who they've caught. This isn't just some random suspect. This is the hammer killer. And they don't even know the full horror yet. The interrogation room is silent. A single dim light. The suspect sits across from the lead detective. Arms crossed. Blank expression. He's calm. Too calm. He knows why he's here. But he says nothing. The detective leans forward. Why did you do it? No response. Another officer slams a file on the table. Crime scene photos spill out. Blood. Broken skulls. Burned bodies. Still nothing. Hours pass. Nothing. Then one officer loses his patience. He slaps Yoo Young-chul across the head. Not hard, just enough to make a point. And that's when everything changes. Yoo Young-chul suddenly snaps. His face twists in pure rage. And then he speaks. You think you've caught me? He leans forward, eyes dark with something sinister. I've already killed 20 people. The entire room goes still. The detectives exchange glances. Did he just confess? This wasn't a slip-up. This was pride. Like he wanted them to know. A full confession just like that. But the police still don't know the full story. Because the reason behind these murders, it's even darker than they imagined. The room is cold. The air is thick with tension. The detective leans in. Why? Yoo Young-chul tilts his head as if bored by the question. Then he answers, to punish them. The detective's eyebrows furrow. Punish who? Yoo smirks. The wealthy. He looks them in the eye. They corrupted society. They take from the poor. They deserved to die. The detectives exchange looks. This is a motive. Does he really believe he's some kind of vigilante? Or is this just a twisted excuse? But then the detective asks another question. And the women? Yu's face changes. The smirk disappears. His voice drops. And he says something that sends chills down everyone's spine. They deserved to die. Cold, emotionless, like he was talking about objects, not people. That's when the police realized the truth. This isn't about justice. This isn't about class warfare. This is about control. This is about power. And now they have to find out just how deep his madness goes. The interrogation room is heavy with silence. The officers stare at the man across from them. He's calm, too calm. And then he starts talking. Yoo Young-chul begins to describe exactly what he did, step by step. Every word out of his mouth makes the detective's stomachs turn. He explains how he studied his victims for weeks before attacking. He didn't just kill at random, he hunted them. He learned their schedules. He watched when their lights turned off at night. He memorized which doors they used, which windows stayed unlocked. And then, when the time was right, he broke in. The hammer came first. 1, 2, 3 brutal strikes to the skull, enough to kill them instantly. And then he cleaned up. He wiped away fingerprints. He took precautions. He wasn't some mindless killer. He was calculated, precise. And the bodies, some he left behind, others. He describes it in detail, the tools, the process, the way he cut through muscle and bone like it was routine. And the worst part, he's smiling. No remorse, no guilt, as if he was just telling a story. By the time he finishes, the detectives know. They aren't dealing with a man. They are dealing with a monster. But before they can process the full horror of his confession, he vanishes. It happens late at night. Yoo Young-chul is still in police custody, or at least that's what they think. The room is quiet. The officers are tired. Then suddenly Yoo starts convulsing. His body jerks violently. His breathing becomes erratic. He falls to the ground, shaking uncontrollably. He's having a seizure. One officer shouts. In the chaos, officers rush in. They unshackle his wrists, calling for paramedics. But here's the thing. He's not actually having a seizure. It's a trick. And while they are distracted, he moves, slips out of the room. One hallway, then another. No one notices him. Not until it's too late. By the time they realize what's happened, Yoo Young-chul is already gone. An entire city is on high alert. Police flood the streets. They search neighborhoods, train stations, alleyways, but he's vanished. The question is no longer, where is he? It's, who will he kill next? The clock is ticking, and every second that passes means he's getting further away. The entire Seoul Metropolitan Police Force is on the hunt. For hours, there's no sign of him. Then a break. A young officer, exhausted from patrolling the streets all night, is walking near a crowded marketplace. And that's when he sees him. A barefoot man walking alone through the crowd. Something about him is off. His clothes are messy. His eyes dart around like he's looking for a way out. And then the officer recognizes his face. It's him, Yoo Young-chul. The officer doesn't wait. He calls for backup and moves in. As soon as Yoo realizes what's happening, he runs. But this time, there's nowhere to go. Officers tackle him to the ground. He fights, claws, screams. But he's outnumbered. They pin him down, restrain him. And the moment they cuff him, he stops struggling. And then he laughs. a chilling, empty laugh. And his first words, I was going to kill 100 people. It wasn't over. He had plans, more victims, more death. And if he had gotten away, there's no telling how many more lives he would have taken. But now, the nightmare is finally over. Or at least, that's what they thought. The interrogation room is silent. Yoo Young-chul sits across from the lead detective, his hands cuffed, his expression cold. Where are the bodies? At first, he doesn't answer. Then a smirk creeps onto his face. Take me there, I'll show you. The officers exchange glances. This is dangerous. Taking a serial killer to his own burial site, there's always the risk that he'll try to escape again. But this is their only chance to uncover the full truth. So they take him. A convoy of police cars drives through the outskirts of Seoul. The city lights disappear. The roads turn to dirt. Then they reach a secluded hilltop covered in trees. A place no one would think to look. Yu steps out, hands still shackled. And then he walks, like he knows exactly where to go. He stops at a patch of earth, gestures down. Dig here. The officers hesitate. Then they start. Shovels hit the ground. Dirt flies. Minutes pass. Then a sickening sound. A shovel strikes something solid. A skull. The officers freeze. They keep digging. Another body. Then another. Then another. They stop counting. This isn't just a killer. This is a mass grave. And as they unearth victim after victim, Yoo Young-chul, he just watches, expressionless. Because for him, this isn't horror. This is a victory. July 2004. The courtroom is packed. Reporters, cameras, families of the victims. Everyone waiting to see the monster who terrorized Seoul. Yoo Young-chul walks in wearing a mask and a cap. The police won't allow the public to see his face, but people already know his name. The Hammer Killer. The charges, 20 murders. The prosecution lays out the gruesome details. The hammer, the home invasions, the dismembered bodies, the burial sites. But Yoo Young-chul, he shows no emotion. Even as his own mother sobs in the courtroom, she begs for forgiveness, says she failed as a mother, that her son is a monster. And he doesn't even look at her. Then the judge speaks. The verdict, guilty. The sentence, death. For the first time, Yoo Young-chul grins, like he expected this, like he wanted this. But the case isn't over, because there's one final twist, and it's about to change everything. 2 years later, 2006, the city of Seoul thought the nightmare was over. Yoo Young-chul was behind bars. Justice was served. Or was it? Because suddenly another serial killer is caught. And when police interrogate him, he confesses to something shocking. He says he was the one who stabbed the women in the streets, the random attacks, the frantic knife killings, the ones Yoo Young-chul had already confessed to. That's right, you lied. He didn't kill them. The police had forced his confession, and the real killer had been free this entire time. How did this happen? How did the police get it so wrong? Did they want a quick conviction? Or did you enjoy the attention so much that he confessed to murders he never even committed? Whatever the reason, it meant one thing. The Seoul police hadn't caught one serial killer. They had two. And the second one had been hunting in the shadows for years. The world moves on. The trial is over. The public forgets. But Yoo Young-chul, he sits in a concrete cell, waiting. South Korea sentenced him to death, a punishment reserved for the worst of the worst. But here's the problem. South Korea hasn't executed a single prisoner since 1997. For nearly 3 decades, death row inmates just sit there. No execution dates, no certainty. Just endless days inside a prison that feels more like a waiting room. For some, it's a worse punishment than death. For you, it doesn't matter. In prison, he is untouchable. No one can stop him from reliving his crimes in his mind. No one can stop him from savoring the fear he caused. For the families of the victims, this isn't justice. They want to see him pay, to make sure he never walks free again. But will he? Could South Korea's legal system ever overturn his sentence? Could he live long enough for laws to change? Or will he die an old man behind bars, never facing true punishment? One thing is certain. Right now, at this very moment, Yoo Young-chul is still alive, sitting in his cell, waiting. The case is closed. The killer is behind bars. But one question still lingers. Why? What makes a person kill so many with no remorse? Was he born a monster? Or did something turn him into one? And here's the real question. Could he have had more victims than we know? Yoo Young-chul confessed to 20 murders. But how many more could there be? How many people forgotten, never reported were buried in that forest? Did he lie about his numbers? Or worse, could there be another serial killer out there still unknown? Because if we've learned anything from this case, it's that the scariest monsters aren't in movies. They are the ones who walk among us,